Welcome to the virtual JaneCon presentation. Director Laura Piani explains how Jane Austen wrecked my life. My name is Amanda-Rae Prescott, and I'm a freelance pop culture journalist. Jane Austen Wrecked My Life is an independent film that stars Camille Rutherford as an aspiring French novelist who gets the chance to attend the Jane Austen Writers' Residency in the UK. The writer's retreat forces her to confront her career and love life struggles head on. The film first premiered at the Toronto International Film Festival last year, and Sony Classics then released the film to U.S. general audiences on May 23, 2025. On May 8th, 2025, I interviewed director and screenwriter Laura Piani on her filmmaking process, the real-life inspiration for this film, and Austen's impact today. This interview is presented with only one technical glitch edited out for you to see my reporting process as clearly and without filters as possible. If you haven't seen Jane Austen Wrecked My Life yet, and I recommend that you do, it is still playing in independent cinemas and will premiere on streaming and on-demand services soon. For the most accurate info on theater and film festival screenings in your area, visit JaneAustenWreckedMyLife.com, which will be linked in the video description. Thank you so much for watching and continuing to support Virtual JaneCon. Alright. Hi, Laura. It's so nice to see you in person versus a Zoom. First of all, why you, a French woman, making a movie all about Jane Austen? Like, tell me the whole story from the beginning.
Thank you. The Jane Austen I didn't start the film with the idea of Jane Austen.
Oh, okay. Where did it go?
I started the idea. The idea comes from my experience as a bookseller at Shakespeare and Company in Paris.
So you were a real life.
I worked there for many years, and I wanted to do a rom-com as a writer, and I wanted to portray the people that I worked with, that I loved so much during all these years at the bookshop, and I wanted to talk about writing. And the imposter syndrome, and the how when you work in a bookshop, when you're surrounded by masterpieces and great writers, and if you want to write, it's sometimes very helpful and sometimes it's quite suffocating, heavy. And then I wanted to do a rom-com, and the queen of rom-com is Jane Austen. She opened the way for me, and so I thought, for a woman who is romantic nowadays, who dreams to write, who dreams to fall in love, who could be the writer that inspired her so much to a point that it's almost a problem, you know? And so I thought about Jane Austen because as a reader, she inspired me, and I remember being amazed by the humor, she was so funny and witty and ahead of her time, etc. So, when you write a film anyway, most of the time it's layers after layers. It's, not one thing and then something else. It's everything together.
When I was watching the film, what I felt more than anything else was how much Jane's presence is also visible in the everyday life of a writer. Can you talk more about how you blended the rom-com tradition with what people expect from an Austen retreat, which is history all day, every day?
Well, I think what happened is that I had this idea of this, like, the character's journey, and then I went to research in England, because I was a reader, but I was not a specialist or an expert about Jane Austen. I'm still not, of course, but I know a bit more than before. And so I went to Chawton, which is the place where she lived the last years of her life with her mother and her sister, and I remember being as moved by her books than by this place where she lived, where you could see the desk. They kept everything intact, and you could see also the bed she shared with Cassandra, her sister, until she died, and this moved me a lot. And at this time in my script, Agathe was alone. She was living alone, and so I stole the sister from Jane Austen Life.
Oh, that's...
for example. So it's not coming from Pride or Prejudice. It's really coming from seeing the bed Jane and Cassandra were sharing.
Yeah.
Because they both decided to not get married, which was extremely modern and complex decision at this time for two women, right? So I think the whole film is a meta conversation with Jane Austen's books, Jane Austen's life, my own experience as a writer, and what I feel, I still feel it. I felt it back in the time, which is we are many people, and we are many people feeling that sometimes we are a bit misplaced, that we don't fit in the world, that we feel we're not living in the right century, and I wanted to address that, all these things together.
For sure. Now, my next question is, how long did you pitch it? First of all, how long did it take to film? And secondly, did you specifically pitch this as I want to commemorate Jane Austen's 150th anniversary?
I don't know. I didn't know anything. It took me 7 years to do this film.
Oh,
so from the very, very beginning of, I'm going to pitch this to the producer to now, it's impossible, especially with the first film, especially with the art house film, that are more difficult to finance and everything. So I would have never imagined that we will celebrate Jane Austen's birthday, and it's so beautiful, this coincidence. And so to answer your question, the first thing you asked me about what I pitched the first time. What I pitched the first time was the story of a bookseller who dreams to write. But never managed to finish a first chapter, and and a romantic who never go until the next meeting, who never reached what happens after the first meeting somehow, and who goes to a writer's residency to write the first novel. That was the idea. I had the title very quickly also. Jane Austen Wrecked My Life was a guideline because it contained a tone that I was looking for. Something, you feel the comedy in the title, and I think it's important to feel the tone of a film as a viewer.
Now, Agatha has to face a decision. Should she take a relationship with the person she's more comfortable with, or she meets someone new?
Yeah.
What was your was there another version of this movie where she ends up with someone else, or was the conflict completely different in the early stages of the film?
No, it was there from the beginning. The love triangle, I think I am a big lover of, admirer of love triangles. I think it's a very classic, timeless dramaturgical structure that works and that you can explore over and over again. And you describe it well. I think it's a story of a woman who is blocked, who has to face her desire and who has to take a risk. And that's why I wanted to have her, torn between the comfortable friendship that is safe because they love each other, and the risk that you take with the unknown when you meet someone and you don't know if it will work or not, and you don't know if you will fit, but you have to take a risk when you want to fall in love somehow. And but I was very clear from the beginning. I didn't want to do another rom-com where a woman is saved by a man or saved by love. I wanted to have a character who has another dream, which is to write, and it's only because she reaches her dream that she can find love. I think it was important for me to address that in a 2025 rom-com.
How do you think Agatha is marketing her novel now, if she finished it? Because it starts out very strange to me premise that she finds a man coming out of her sake cup. Like, where did that come from? Was that one of your failed drafts, or just something you thought humorous for a starting point?
No, I think these sake glasses makes me laugh so much, especially when I was little. I was so curious because my mother never wanted me to have these, even for water, because they were full of naked men, naked women, what I'm saying. They are most of the time for men, usually. So it made me smile to reverse the thing, And how would Agatha? I have no idea. It's a very good question. I think what I can only hope for Agatha is that after this first book, she's already writing the second one, because it's the second book, the hardest one to read.
Oh, for sure. Now, what makes this film different than your previous work, and what was the thing you wish you knew before you started filming?
so it's a first feature as a director, so it's a very different experience, of course, than writing scripts for others. So I learned so much. I mean, the whole thing is a learning experience. I think that I wish I would have known that. Let me think. It's a good question. What did I learn? I learned that actors show you how to direct them, teach you how to direct them, and that you have to adapt yourself to your actors and not the other way around. And I remember, it's a dance. I remember feeling that sometimes as a director you can give too many informations. You want to be so precise that you can a bit overwhelm an actor by having too much directions and informations. And sometimes it's the opposite. So, sometimes you really need to take in consideration all the questions an actor has before, even if you spoke about the scene before many times, because through the questions they make their way to the character. So this is a very fascinating process, directing actors and creating with them the character that will be on screen, that is not in your mind or in the scripts, that is between them and you as a director.
How long did it take to actually go from the first scene shot to the last scene shot?
6 weeks.
That's not
6 weeks. It's not a lot, but it was super speed.
Now, what was the most difficult part of it in terms of logistics? Was it the travel? Was it figuring out when we have these locations open? What was it for you?
No, it was definitely not having enough time for the shots, because when you have a limited budget and not a lot of time, you need to move to the next scene quickly, and you don't have a big crew, so it means the setup are longer because it's a small crew. So it means the actors have to wait, and it means that once you have a chance to shoot the scene, you have 4 takes, 3 takes, no more, before you move to something else. So I was lucky enough to have rehearsed a lot with the actors, so they were ready and they were really good actors. But there are some scenes that were important where we had one shot, and I'm sure it could have been better, or I could have done differently with more time. So I think it's the question of the time that is so crucial with shooting.
What was the most technically challenging scene to film? Either props or how many people were in the room at a time to manage? Yeah. Which one was it?
I think the hardest one, and the one that I love the most, which is a contradiction in itself, is the ball scene. Because the ball scene was, tons of people to direct. We had no money for the costume, no money for the lighting, no money to have a real choreographer. So it was all about, finding ideas, being creative under strong constraints. But somehow it was, we shot during the night. We had just one night for the whole scene. And somehow, sometimes when a crew is having this I don't know, it's quite mysterious. We were all on the same page. It went so fluidly. I cannot describe it differently. Everybody knew what to do. We found solutions because with the DOP we were thinking about how to light this scene and make it special, because it's in the manor. It's in the dining room. The dining room becomes the ballroom. So how to make it special and magical? And we watched Amadeus, and we were thinking, you know what? Let's put candles everywhere. It costs nothing, and it creates this magic. With the costume designer, we had no money to buy, to have costumes for the 100 people that were there dancing around. So she went to buy very cheap dresses, and she did the puff sleeves and the colors, and it worked. And for the choreography, I called a woman that I knew from my short film who was a dancer, and she came to help 4 hours. Can you imagine the actors? They had crazy. 4 hours to rehearse.
That's a lot.
That's really so. All these things that should be that should be a disaster. Somehow it worked, and it was a very beautiful experience.
I want to flip a little bit back to earlier. I asked about Jane Austen's impact. what do you believe is Jane Austen's specific impact in France and French literature?
I don't know about her impact in French literature. Honestly, I'm not sure she has any. I do think though that there is a Jane Austen society in France.
Yeah.
She has fans everywhere in the world.
Of course.
But I don't know. I don't think she has any impact on French literature. Unfortunately, I think French people don't read enough English literature apart from Dickens and Shakespeare. You know, they don't. So yeah, I don't know.
Another thing I found fascinating about directing is how you use, I would say, lighting and also making the scene in itself a character. Can you describe how you did that and since you said budget was already an issue, was part of that because of your budget?
Can you rephrase a little bit, because I'm not sure I got your question.
Okay, no problem. Your directing style, I've noticed, it leans on naturalistic and also a side of letting things just be as they are.
Yeah.
Not a lot of composition. That's clear. Is that part due to your budget or just also your style?
No, I think it's a style. I think actors for me are the most important thing. I think I wanted to film this film not as a comedy but as a drama, and I wanted the comedy to come from the actors and the lines and the situations. So it was a go between, all the time between what was at stake, what was the scene about, and the way we could actually frame it, so we would not be sure that it would be, if it was funny or sad or melancholic, and my references were more dramas than comedies actually, in terms of lighting and framing and everything. I was very much inspired by James Ivory films, World's End, for example, the way he films a house, time passing, the melancholy of his film is a great source of inspiration. And I love, you say plan séquence, you say long shot, long cut. I love this in movies, and it's a big challenge with comedy because it has to be perfect in terms of acting, and it's not easy with the editing when you have long shots because you cannot create rhythm within the long shot. So it's like a challenge, a huge challenge that I adore. When what happened in the set when you are doing a long shot, and take after take, you fix something either technical or on the acting, and it's better and better, and then you have it. It's one of the most beautiful experience you can have with a crew, actually, to do a beautiful long shot.
Is there a scene or a set of scenes that ended up on the cutting room floor either because of time or something else didn't work out?
A lot. So much becomes, you in any film, I think, no matter the budget, is you shoot things, you think they're great, and then they are terrible, and sometimes it's just that they don't fit. It's not that they are not good, but it just doesn't fit. It doesn't work with the rhythm you're looking for. You rewrite completely your film in the editing room, and I noticed that sometimes the things that seems the most extraordinary on set are not the ones that are the most interesting in the editing room. So it's a totally different, fascinating process of discovering your film through editing. And as a scriptwriter, I adore this journey, because you write with images, but you write.
Yeah. How involved were you in the casting process?
I chose each of them from the beginning. I wrote without having anyone in mind, and then I found Camille, and I was really happy to have her, because she was perfect for the role. And then I chose, because of the freedom we decided to keep that comes from limited budget. But the beautiful thing was that nobody imposed me anything in terms of casting. I went for theater actors, clowns, people I knew, studied movies with, a lot of people, a lot of friends during the adventure. So I was completely involved, and I'm so happy. I choose each of them. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's awesome. Because oftentimes, as people get solicited when you're doing casting, or the studio wants a giant name.
Yeah.
Now, actually, I'm curious about your relationship with the studios in the process, because I know this is coming out on Sony Classics, and I'm assuming elsewhere in the world, other people will be looking at it. How was your relationship with them? Was it more of a battle between like the artists and their vision, or did they feel like, hey, this is a great thing, we're just gonna pick it up and just take it as it is?
There was no battle at all, because there were no studio involved at all.
Oh, just until the end.
Until the end.
Oh, that's
and
great.
Sony Classic discovered the film at Toronto. We premiered in Toronto, and we were so lucky and so happy that they found us among 300 films, and it's the same with the other distributors, because it's been released everywhere in the world, but people discovered the film once it was over. So I wish I could have, but maybe more supported from the beginning. But in the same time, this film is exactly what I wanted to do, what I could do with the budget I had. But every choice is mine, even the bad ones. I would say I cannot blame anyone.
Did you look at other Jane Austen adaptations, both film and on television, for inspiration, and which ones were the ones you drew from the most?
I've seen pretty much all the adaptations. I think the one that really stands out, that stays and that I want to rewatch every year, is the Sense and Sensibility by Ang Lee.
Oh yeah, that's amazing.
That's my favorite, I think, from far away. And I really like Pride and Prejudice, the one the Joy writes.
Oh yeah,
that they are my two favorites.
I mean, it's crazy that both of them are now 20 and 30 years old. It's like, because you feel like it's just yesterday both of them came out, for sure.
They're timeless, really, for sure.
Now, what do you think Jane would say about your film if she saw it?
I don't know what would Jane say about the film. I don't know what she would say. I hope she would feel how much I thank you somehow through this film for the great books that are still celebrated 350 years after she was born, and for being this kind of the woman she was, also for opening the way for many other writers, for telling us that it is possible to address very deep and important questions with humor and romance and lightness, all these things.
That is a perfect way to end this interview. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Stop. Alright. Okay, let's hope this thing is still running. Okay.